What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm gonna break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of tickers out there. I'm gonna break down why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have Nvidia's earnings and some big data coming out for the morning, and what the news and data is suggested for Tesla stock as we have some new developments that just came out. Before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks plus a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in just 9 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so we had a very crazy day today. Basically, the market ended up gapping up quite nicely before Nvidia got this massive sell-off. After getting this sell-off with this very big looking red bar, we were expecting a sell-off at least to some extent, just looking at the technicals, but it ended up going even lower than expected. Now, as Nvidia ended up dropping the way it did, we ended up getting very tight. And I know Nvidia has a tendency of dropping during some of its earnings, or at least approaching its earnings. There have been other reports or other instances where this thing even pumped approaching its earnings, but most of the time it does have a tendency of kind of selling off a bit. But the thing about it is right now, I don't want to call this thing, very weak solely. I don't want to say it's just going to sell off from here or just start pumping, because the current technicals are kind of indecisive, because for half the day, Nvidia just traded sideways, going back and forth, forming this wedge, and this continued in the after hours as well. So there's going to be a big move coming out for tomorrow. It is possible for this thing to try to bounce and break to the upside, or also break to the downside. And this will dictate the entire market, and the best way to go about this would be to watch it in real time and see which way it breaks, because this will affect Tesla. It's going to affect SPY and the QQQ, and I'm going to break down exactly why that is. Now, although the market is quite indecisive about which way it's going to go, we're overall quite neutral when it comes to the sentiment dictating the market. We were very close to fearful at one point, but we're still quite neutral. The market is less greedy than before, looking at these momentum indicators. And on top of this, there is some fear looking at the current active buying and selling that is dictating the markets. That happened because of the facts that we saw some negative news about some the S&P Global just cutting some credit ratings for the banks, and also because of some retail such as Dick's Sporting Goods and Macy's having to cut their 1-year forecasts. So that's part of the reason why the market sold off just a tiny bit. The put and call options are not really that bad overall. It still is a little bit closer to the fearful side, as there's still lots of puts out there. So just be very careful when you see news like this. For tomorrow in particular, we're going to start off the day with some data dropping. So that's going to be the first thing to watch out for during the first 15 minutes and the first 30 minutes of market open. 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the PMI report coming out. That's going to give us more information about the manufacturing and service sectors. So watch for volatility 15 minutes after the market opens tomorrow. And then 30 minutes after open, we have the new home sales, or at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Expect some volatility for the first 15 and 30 minutes of the trading day because of this. Then after that, there isn't really any big pieces of data coming out from there. But the big thing that's going to be making the headlines is going to be Nvidia. This thing has earnings tomorrow after the market closes, and this is going to be on almost everyone's eyes. If this thing ends up pumping after earnings, if we end up gapping up and exploding, the market's going to likely follow it, and we're going to see some nice green on Thursday. If the opposite happens and this thing gets a massive rug pull, the market's going to come down for Thursday as well. So we want to be as open-minded as possible. Now, we also have like Kohl's and just a couple of other earnings coming up before the market opens. Nothing's going to be that significant compared to like Nvidia. So watch this very carefully. Watch for their guidance. It's going to be very telling. Now, as far as Tesla goes, there's some good news that came out. We saw the Cybertruck kind of like drifting around. We saw the Cybertruck just continuing to make its way around Fremont. And it's going to be very interesting to watch for it. Now, this is important because many of these massive analysts are saying that for Tesla, the Cybertruck is going to be one of the biggest catalysts to help this thing start pushing to $300 a share over the next couple of months. If that's the case, that's great news for them. But for now, they're still doing some tests on the battery endurance. Still good news for Tesla as it's continuing to improve. Now, there's news coming out about how the FSD beta has actually gone right into some flood waters, which is not good news whatsoever, but this is what is expected when you have a beta. The FSD right now is not necessarily perfect, okay? It still has improvements to be made. So with all of this going on, the best way to go about this would be to just watch the charts carefully, based off how Tesla's moving. And just know that news like this is normal because it's not necessarily perfect. The FSD is not perfect. That could be what's going on with it. At the same time, there's a possibility that the media could be lying about this or exaggerating. This may not have truly been what was going on. We don't know for sure unless there's like an investigation and we actually have conclusive evidence. So I'm still open-minded about this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was an issue because there's still improvements that have to be made. Now, for the overall inventory levels, the Model Y inventory levels are just going up like crazy. We're seeing a boost in production right now. If we actually look at the production right here, we're seeing this increase right over here on the Y. It's actually increasing its production since the previous quarter. And on top of this, they're producing a lot of these in North America and also in China, at least from the last couple of days. So North America includes Texas and Fremont, and it still is seeing some very high levels of production. That's part of why it's going up like this. But there's also an external factor, and that could be a demand issue. I wouldn't necessarily consider it that huge of an issue unless we get more information about it. But there is a possibility of it because the inventory levels tend to be like a lot lower, like in the 3,000s or lower. It's currently getting closer to like 4,500. So this could mean that we're seeing a little bit less demand for the Model Y. We'll see if something changes over the next couple of days, however, just to be safe. Now, moving forward, the price price ratio is trying to bounce right over here. We're going to be watching to see if this could try to bounce as Tesla's gaining some relative strength, and Tesla's going to try to hold up. So we're going to be watching that carefully. Wednesdays tend to be green about 48.6% of the time, so watch that carefully as well. And finally, don't forget about the short interest. This ended up going up for Tesla to about 41 million Tesla shares shorted. We will see if this ends up affecting it too. 130 million, excuse me, was the volume. So we got a lot of volume in the morning before this thing started to slow down. Not bad for Tesla whatsoever. So now let's break down the charts. How are things looking? Nvidia is very indecisive. If it ends up breaking above the wedge, you're going to be watching 460. If that breaks, there's 462, 468, and 470 as resistance levels. If it breaks down, you're going to be watching the support right over here. I had some support at 456, also 452. If that breaks, watch 450. And if that ends up breaking down, we're going to see this thing sink down to like 446, 442, then potentially even like 436 below that if we end up seeing a move to the downside. So what seems more probable? Well, it is looking a little bit more bearish from a technical standpoint. The bearish volume did take control of it. We saw high volume selling today, so it's looking a little bit weaker, but just to be safe, we want to watch and see if it truly breaks down. Even if Nvidia ends up breaking down, right, there's always the possibility that after the earnings come out, everything else could change. So watch this very carefully and see which way it breaks just to be safe, but always be open-minded nonetheless. For Tesla, we did see some selling as well on Tesla after getting this like big pop, high volume selling as well, but it's very, very indecisive and very flat right now. If we're bullish on Tesla, if you want to see Tesla break out, you want to see it hold 235, break above that, then we have 238 coming next. And if that breaks, 240 is on the table. If it fails to get the breakout and hold above 235, you're going to be watching support at 232, followed by 230. 230 needs to hold. If 230 breaks, then this thing could start sinking to 228, then potentially 225. Those are some important levels to watch for. It is very indecisive right now, so I'm going to be open-minded on Tesla just to be safe. Watch and see if it could hold above 235 or if it breaks below 230. And regardless of what happens tomorrow during the open hours, Nvidia's earnings will dictate how it ends up moving. That's going to be the much bigger factor. It is quite indecisive right now. So just watch for Nvidia. That's going to be much more telling. On the QQQ, this is very interesting. We have both an inverse head and shoulders and a head and shoulders that is developing on it. And either one of them could end up playing out. So like right here, you could draw out like a head and shoulders on the QQQ. I know it's a little hard to see, but this red line right here would be like the bearish case. And the bullish case would be us kind of like zooming out like this. I do apologize if this chart's kind of messy. I didn't get a chance to like adjust everything on it, but I think all these levels are still quite significant. If there's an inverse head and shoulders on the QQQ, you do have potential for this thing to start pushing up after the earnings and etc. But just to be honest with you all, it could go either way as there's both a bull and bear case, which are quite valid. So if the QQQ, and we're going to close these for now, if the QQQ ends up, at this level, if we break above 363.5 and hold it, we're going to be watching this thing push up for this resistance at 364. If it holds 365, this thing has the potential to push up to 368 plus. If it breaks below 362, it could start sinking to 360 and 357. So watch 362 as support and 365 as resistance. We will see which one ends up holding. For Apple stock, we're going to be watching resistance around 178 and then 177.5, and support is going to be around 177 flat, 176.5 and 176. If 176 breaks, expect it to fall into the 175s. For now, I just want to mention that there is a very nice looking potential ascending wedge that's developing on it. If this breaks to the downside, this is going to cause the market to get a rug pull. Be very careful. We have this big gap down here at 175. We will see which way it breaks. The best thing to do is just be as patient as possible. And we'll see tomorrow how this ends up developing. There's a rising wedge, which is a big red flag for the markets. It tells me that either Nvidia's earnings or Jerome Powell's speech could cause some downside for the market. So we'll watch and see if that ends up being the case. For SPY, if we have this giant inverse head and shoulders that's still developing, if this is technically the case, we could see SPY try to push back up above like this 440 area, then fill this imbalance at 441 and start pushing upwards after Nvidia's earnings. If not, the bearish case is going to be this head and shoulders right here. I'm going to close this area right here. The head and shoulders could also be forming right here. We have like a left shoulder, a head, and then a potential right shoulder that could be forming before this thing starts sinking into the 431s to much lower levels, just like this. So I'm going to be open-minded. There's both a bull and bear case. It was very tight today. If it breaks and holds 439, this thing could start pushing for 440 plus. If it breaks below 437.5, it could start sinking to the 436s, and that's going to lead to more bearish price action. So watch 437.5 as support, see if that holds or not, and watch 439 as resistance. If that breaks, it could start pushing. We basically chopped sideways for the majority of the day, didn't really do much, so always be open-minded. So with that said, I think I went over the majority of the stocks out there, the majority of the tickers out there. The dollar is forming a bearish divergence. If the dollar ends up breaking to the downside because of this could lead to some downside for the dollar and potential upside for the markets, but we'll have to wait and see if it gets this rejection or not. On the VIX, it's about to get a bearish cross on the PPO. If it ends up breaking down, you're going to be watching this thing come down to like 16.5 or lower. If the VIX does break down on this bearish divergence and this bearish cross on the PPO, we could see this start to drop, and that's going to be because of the market potentially bouncing. So far, it's very indecisive. We're not getting that confirmation just yet. And then on top of this, I'm just going to quickly go over just a couple of these. For Google, if you're bullish, you want to see it break above 130 and hold it. If you're bearish, you want to see it break below 129 and retest 128.11. It's very tight right now, kind of in the middle, not really doing anything. So just be open-minded. We're forming a wedge on Google, going back and forth and back and forth. Nothing much is going on. So watch for a break in either direction. For Amazon, if it breaks 135, watch this thing start pushing for 136 plus. If it breaks below 133, you're going to be watching 132.7 as support. If that fails us, Amazon can start sinking to 131. We're in the middle on Amazon. It's very tight as well. Same thing with Meta. If you want to be bullish on Meta, you need to hold above 290. If that breaks and holds 293, then 295 are possibilities. If it breaks below 285, it could start sinking to 281. So we're kind of in the middle. Watch 285 as support and 290 as resistance. We're in the middle for now. We're going to see what happens with Nvidia. And then don't forget, after Nvidia's earnings, there's going to be a much bigger move. So the market is very indecisive. We're going to see which way it ends up moving. That's the best thing I can tell you. So watch these levels very, very carefully, especially on Tesla stock. The news has been kind of like all over the place for Tesla, some good things, some bad things. So always be open-minded and just know Tesla's getting very, very tight on the smaller time frames. Let me just bring back the 5-minute chart just to show you. And we will see which way it breaks. It is still continuing to get, tight and tight, not really doing anything. We could even extend this. It's just not really doing much so far. And then watch and see which level it ends up breaking at. Watch and see which way it goes. We're going to see a big move tomorrow in the morning based off all the reports. Don't forget, there's going to be some volatility for the first 15 and 30 minutes, and then wait for Nvidia's earnings because that's going to be very telling. All right, so I hope this video was helpful to some extent. Have a great day, everyone. Watch your levels carefully. I can't really predict how this is going to move because it depends on Nvidia and these different factors. But for now, we will see what happens after the earnings as the market's getting ready for a big move. And until then, I will see you guys tomorrow. So take care, remain calm, cool, and collected. Test it to the moon because the long term is very bright. And peace out.